Welcome to this week's episode of the Drivetime Podcast. We're here in the studio this week with Olly Harrison, who's the COO of Green IP. Now, we all like to pick up the phone from time to time. I'm a bit of a chatter. And in this episode, we're going to look at really what's going on around the technology in your telephone systems and how you can start to unlock some of that and also overlay AI. So you'll enjoy this episode. Olly Harrison, you're the COO for Green IP, and it's really great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Jacqui. Yeah, really excited to be here. Yeah.
So I met you guys, the whole team actually, at Fusion Live 25 in London. And I didn't know what you did. I was like, who are you and what do you do? So I do that a lot at events. I walk up and go, who are you and what do you do? And we've had a couple of calls, and I think it's really good to explore. We talk a lot about tech, and actually you guys work in telco in good old fashioned, old school phone calls with tech. So how do you actually make the most of that person to person interaction through the tech that you provide? So I think this conversation is going to be really useful because every single dealership has to speak to a customer, probably using a phone system. So it's how do we kind of make sure you optimize that channel, not just rely on email.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I should back his house. So just a bit about you, Olly. You've been at Green IP not that long actually, but you've kind of, you've come in and you're seeing the wave of change, but just a little bit about your background and how you ended up in automotive.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in the telecoms industry coming up 9 years now, believe it or not. So fresh out of school. Previously to my experience at Green IP as more in the sort of the technical solutions for a company that was more of a platform provider. So the really sort of nuts and bolts in terms of telephony and how all that comes together. And yeah, I've been at Green IP for 3 months now. Absolutely loving the challenge. It's really good fun. And it's interesting learning the automotive industry as someone who's always a bit of a lifelong learner. I've been involved in automotive and seen how it is, but really being ingrained in it from the Green IP perspective, it's an interesting industry. Lots of things to learn, lots of opportunities to get better as well, I think, and that's sort of what we try and help for at Green IP.
Yeah. So your background really is in working with telcos, and actually, I think my first knowledge of like you, lifelong learner, and I spent time. I've mentioned on the podcast a couple of times, I spent time at Auto Trader, and you would have personalized numbers from ads. And that meant that you would use a telco or a telephone system provider, and you could then attribute where your inbound calls were coming from. But it's kind of moved a long way from those sort of days. But just talk about the history of telcos, because what I want to do in the episode is start to unpack what you can do and how you can start to then overlay AI analytics and sentiment scoring, which is something that you do. That's what you do, pretty much.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting sort of how it's changed even in my 9 years. I mean, before that, obviously, you'd have something called a PBX, or a public or private branch exchange, which would be a massive hunk of tin, probably the size of this room, sat in a car dealership or a hotel or in someone's office, for example. And if that went over and that failed, then your whole telephony system's down. And that's been sort of the way it was for quite a long time. When I joined the industry 9 years ago, it's very much a case of now it's hosted telephony. So that's what we do at Green IP. We're fully hosted, and that's utilizing the cloud for technology. So rather than having your big hunk of metal on site, it's all hosted in the cloud. So it's been really interesting to see the transition of that in terms of just your old school PBX and then moving it to the cloud, but also how the industry's been challenged on the pricing model around that. So when you had a PBX, there's very much upfront cost support contracts. Now actually we've hosted you more monthly subscription recurring model. If you want another service, you can turn it on. Whereas back in the old days, you'd have to buy a card or buy a brand new box to stick on site, for example, to do call recording. So it's been really, really interesting to see how it's moved from sort of the really old days into terms of where we are now. And I'm sure, like most industries, there was a real line in the sand when COVID happened. That was a real sort of interesting point in terms of behavior adoption around how businesses are using telephony to their benefit, and also giving the employees that benefit of saying, this is the way I want to work right now, rather than this is how the company wants to work. And being agile enough to be able to handle that is quite a key component as well.
So when you say the line in the sand was COVID, and obviously we saw dealerships closed, businesses closed. One of the other guests said that when she first moved to the UK, she was part of the Eat Out to Help Out kind of campaign. I was like, I even forgot that was a thing. Like we've just erased it from my brain. So what was the behaviour shift that you saw in COVID? Just because I don't want to assume I know what happened. I don't know what happened for you.
It's definitely a shift in trend from basically sort of physical handsets. That was the way people worked. The collaboration element of the telecoms world, because they are closely entwined, was very much limited. So you basically collaborate on email, sending files, and instant messaging, etc. And you had quite a lot of different systems for different purposes, not necessarily integrated in together. With COVID, obviously, the work from home, etc., people needed soft phones, soft clients. So rather than a physical handset, something a bit of software on your laptop, that becomes your phone in essence. And the demand was there for that. I mean, I've not had a physical phone for 9 years in terms of actually on my desk. I use a soft phone, and we definitely saw that trend in terms of moving to a headset soft phone model, but also just extra tools. I mean, when we had people working in an office, you might have a manager that can just pop their head up and go and see what everyone's doing. But actually, when you have that remote workforce, tools like analytics and call recordings, it actually became even more relevant in terms of that aspect. So, and we've seen it change, and we've not really seen it go back. I mean, hardware is still really strong. You go into a dealership right now, you see desk phones on the desk, etc. Yeah, which is and that's how some people want it. But there's definitely a lot more tools and technologies that we can give people in terms of how do they want to communicate. So soft phones, something that's really grown over the last is more sort of Wi-Fi handsets. So you would look a bit like your old home phone, should we say, that you can pick up and move around the dealership. It just gives you that mobility. So we saw quite a change in attitudes in terms of the end point of terms of how you actually want to communicate. And like I said, it's not really gone back since. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I don't think any of we hot desk at work, when you go to any Keyloop office, there is a desk, there are no phones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, soft phone to me is Teams. Yeah. I call people on Teams or WhatsApp or whatever. And I think probably the biggest shift, I remember Nick King talked about this, people accelerated what would have been a 10-year project into literally 10 weeks because you had to get tech enabled really quickly because nobody was moving anywhere. Yeah. And it's amazing how agile you can be when someone set your building on fire. You just kind of have to move to the other building very quickly. Yeah. So just thinking about some of the stuff that you've mentioned there, Olly, you talked about hardware, big chunks of tin, moving up to the cloud. And then also, like, as dealerships operate differently, how you manage, I suppose, internal comms, because you'd phone the service department or you've got internal extensions, you phone a technician. Actually, a lot of that now is moving to devices. So we see now the automation of so much of our world. Technician can update a job card digitally. Service advisor knows that that's been updated, or even actually the consumer gets informed in an app. Yeah. So all of that tech is kind of changing, but still we need to make sure we can speak to people. So coming back into, I suppose, how consumers then interact and how dealers are using things like phone systems to make sure that customers can ask questions. If they're curious about something and want to buy something, see if it's still available, book something in, speak to a human. We talked about that. So what's the trend around just how much people are talking to each other? How do you what do you notice going on there? Yeah, it's still huge. So in terms of some statistics around that, 67% of buyers that are looking to buy a car will phone the automotive dealer at some point during that sales process. Obviously, some sales processes are longer than others, but it's really key, obviously, when that phone call happens, in terms of making sure you provide the great service that you can. Because if, for example, that phone call happens at the first point in that sales stage and you don't answer the phone, you're slow to respond, etc., that obviously gives that negative impression straight away. If it happens a bit later on, then you might be able to manage that. But it's still the primarily way when you're not walking into a dealership to still get in contact with an automotive dealer. So it still plays a huge role in terms of that. And that's when we just go back to what you mentioned earlier in terms of the old tin on site, etc., and all that sort of fun stuff. By moving to the cloud, that opens up endless possibilities in terms of how we can then integrate other systems, such as the Keyloop DMS, for example, and how we can then utilize that integration, not only with that, but with your website, your marketing agencies, your TV ads, all of that sort of stuff, and how when customers come into your car dealership in terms of how when they connect to the guest network, where they're moving around the showroom, bringing all of that data in play, and then having that in front of the agent to actually say, oh, hello, Mr. Harrison, how are you today? I see you've been looking at the X3 online, for example, and actually being able to
go through that and go, okay, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So yeah, it still plays a huge role. And a lot of people haven't got it right yet. And that's fine. And that's kind of, I suppose, where we come in terms of trying to help educate, engage, and make those small differences that can add up to massive impact and changes. So it's still huge role in terms of the automotive space.
Yeah. So a couple of things. As I walk around a showroom, you can obviously track what I'm doing. Interesting. Didn't know you could do that. I quite like using dealership Wi-Fi when I'm in there. Didn't know you were tracking me. And I'm on a Teams call. Normally I just go in there and wait for my car to be serviced. But so what else? So in terms of the other thing I think that's really important, whenever you ring up most businesses now, it's saying your call's being recorded for training or whatever. I suppose it's not just training, it's sentiment analysis. And there's lots of other good things you can do when you're interacting with a business to do a job. So Auto Trader talk about the jobs that you have to do in the car sales process or a car buying process, like the jobs to be done if you're buying an EV or whatever it is. So what is it that you're looking for when customers are phoning up? Because we also, Ollie, we talk about omnichannel a lot. I think it's really important that omnichannel isn't just digital or physical, it's also phone. Yeah. And actually a lot of people my age, I like picking up the phone. Yeah. I like talking to people. Often I'm in the car and I'll call someone because I like a good chat. I don't want it always to be on camera, So
me too, I'm the same,
So I think, so what else are we, when you're thinking about how to use, so for retailers, how you can make that experience connected into the other touch points that you have. And you mentioned online advertising, how somebody responds to something, all those different touch points. So just talk about what it is you're looking for and how you can help retailers think about what they should be tracking.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much there really is in terms of that conversation that you have via the telephone. We spoke about it earlier. It's probably everyone's so data in sort of rich in terms of
obsessed. Data obsessed these days. Oh my God.
Absolutely. And how much data can I get? And my opinion is the telephone is the most undervalued and underutilized source of data that you can actually get from your customers.
Yeah.
And it's really, really key in terms of how much we can take from that. And I suppose it really comes down to how well do you know your customers now and what technologies you've got to be able to answer the question, how well can we get to know our customers? So some of the things that we look for could be, how often is this customer phoning up? What time of day are they phoning us? Do they tend to phone us in the morning? Do they tend to phone us at lunchtime on their lunch break? So we can start to build that little bit of a picture up. Also, we look at sentiment analysis. So when that customer phones in and they're dealing with one of our sales reps, what's the tone? And also how do we break that tone down into all these various emotions? I mean, there's so many, I think there's about 25 different emotions that we can track during a phone call, which is still boggles my mind, to be completely honest.
We need to deep dive into that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And how then that customer's overall sentiment score with us as a business, is it more positive when they're talking to the sales team? Is it potentially more negative when they're talking to the service team? If we've, and that's just in terms of stuff that we can track on the call. What we can then do off the back of that is say, actually, do you know what, this customer, they've been a loyal customer to our brand and our dealership for a long time. Well, they've got a bit of a funky sentiment in terms of when they speak to the service team. So how about when they phone in to book their next service, let's not route them to the team member that's on their first week and maybe have some knowledge gaps. Let's route them to the more experienced member of the team, or even maybe the service manager to help deal with that inquiry because they're a loyal customer, but recent interactions with us have been potentially a bit more negative. So how do we then turn that customer around?
So do you know that from the number that I'm calling from is in your system? You know who I am. You know that I might be a funky customer. I might have some big feelings about things.
Yes.
You would be through to somebody who's going to really look after me.
Absolutely, yeah. So. And we can then also bring in multiple different data sources. So it's not just the phone number that you've got. So that will, when that call comes in, we know who you are. We know what car you've got. We know if your car's in the workshop for a service booking. We know when your finance deal's coming to an end. We can then start to talk into how do we integrate your website tracking. So we can say, we know this customer's, let's use a BMW, for example, they've got a free series estate, but actually they keep looking at our X3 online, for example. And actually when they're on our website and they press call button, what web page were they on when they made that call? Was it the X3? So rather than me trying to sell them an electric vehicle, for example, they're looking at the SUV market. So we can bring all that into play. Bit like what we spoke about earlier as well. Some interesting stuff that we've seen is tracking users on the guest network. So when someone signs into our guest Wi-Fi, how we map their journey throughout our showroom. Do they go to the coffee station first to get their free coffee? Fair enough. That's what I do.
So how are you tracking that? How do you?
So that's basically, when you sign into the guest network, you've got access points all around the car dealership.
Right. You just literally seeing where my IP address is roaming in the business.
Where are we connecting to? And then we can build that picture. So footfall is obviously a key aspect to any car dealership alongside telephony. And what we work with third parties is actually say, how do we track that customer journey throughout the car dealership? So when they come into the dealership, what's the first thing they do? Do they go get the free coffee and raid the cookies, for example? Do they then? Me too. Do they spend more time in the EV section, for example, rather than over in the SUV section? And what we've actually seen, which is pretty interesting, is actual car dealers will completely change the layout of their showroom to facilitate technology like this. So they group certain sections of cars together, whereas they may have been completely spread out before, but they've got a bit of an SUV section, the EV section, for example. So what's something that I think is really cool that we can then do is bring all of that data in. So say if I'm the customer and I phone up and say, hey, I need to book my car in for a service, they know, the agent that I'm speaking to knows that I've been looking at the SUV online. When I was last in the dealership, I was loitering around the SUV section. When I made the call to book my car in for a service, I was actually looking at the BMW X3 online. Rather than give me a 1 Series or an X2, for example, as my courtesy car when I'm having my service. Here you go, Mr. Harrison, how about a complimentary 40-hour test drive on the BMW X3? Fantastic. So you can create that really seamless experience for the customer. By all this technology in the background working really difficult. And we've seen that across not only the automotive, but there's a lot of lessons that we've learned as a company from the hospitality industry and how they've done that. And we bring that expertise in terms of educating the automotive industry with our customers on how to provide that seamless experience. So there's so much that we can do just on the telephony side of things, but it's all well and good having all this data and all this really cool stuff. It's all ultimately about that human connection when you're on the phone call.
I'd love to kind of get your view on who else is doing this really well and the results that you see by tapping into some of that sentiment analysis.
Yeah, I think probably the best example is the hospitality sector, because they have always and continue to have that really sort of customer experience centric approach. And it's interesting because then obviously we have that guest experience, and then that's where our bar is then set for every other purchase or every other interaction we have, whether it be retail, automotive, etc. So some of the really cool stuff that we've done in the hospitality sector with our customers is I suppose there's a lot of parallels to automotive in terms of how we approach it. So one of the key things is making sure we have integration into the technology stack for that hotel. So dealers will have a DMS and properties will have a PMS. So it's very similar. So most hotel properties will have a property management system, so PMS. So what we do is we integrate with that. So in terms of some of the nice things that we can then do in terms of enhancing the guest experience is, for example, most when you check into a hotel, it's usually after 3:00, right? What we can do is using the phone in the room, when the mates and the housekeeping team go in to clean the room, what they'll do is, rather than, again, traditionally you'd have a sheet, you'd tick off saying, yep, this room's clean, this room's clean, this room's clean. And then at 2:30, 3:00, that gets handed to the receptions team so they know exactly when the room's ready. That's a really old way of doing it. What we do is we actually say, well, here's a couple of codes, you put that into the phone, that tells reception straight away if that room is ready. So if you've got a gold member coming to check in, and that room's been clean and ready for 4 hours, but no one's using it, well, hey, Mr. Harrison, do you want to check in? Yeah, that's fantastic. Also with, mini bar charges for etc. So as soon as that guest checks out, the housekeeping team can go in and go, okay, yeah, this is a mini bar, boom, 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 into the phone, updates the PMS, and that bill gets sent to the customer straight away. So rather than waiting. So that element of it is pretty cool. One of the things that I think hospitality does really, really well is having that central source of data. So to use some examples, Marriott Bonvoy or Hilton Honors, again, you put in all your information once, right? And it's stored. So for example, if I was staying at a hotel and I phone down to the restaurant and say, hey, I want to make a booking for 2, for example, it will know my wife is vegetarian. So when I get to the restaurant, there's a vegetarian menu already at the table, so I don't have to go and ask for it. So, that's really, really cool. And that's what we do in terms of integrating the PMS. And funnily enough, the same if I'm walking around a resort and I'm hanging around the spa, for example, it knows that, again, with the guest Wi-Fi, that I've been hanging around the spa. Maybe in my app, it will say 6 hours later, oh, hi, Mr. Harrison, by the way, we've got a special promotion for you. We want to give you 20% off the spa. Guess what? I'm probably going to book the spa. So it's really interesting. And hospitality is doing a really good job.
Yeah.
Not only of delivering that seamless customer experience, but also just from monetization.
Thinking about then telcos, and you sort of mentioned some terminology, AVRs, AVIs. There's some other things. There's some tech around telephony that I think it'd be useful to understand. And then we can start to think about how we apply it in automotive retail space or after sales space, and how you start to build on that picture of me as a human and what I need. So it'd be really good if you could just talk about some of the, I know it's like buzzword or acronym or whatever. There are so many of them in automotive that.
Oh, so many in telephony as well. It took me a couple of years to sort of get to, everyone said there's too many TLAs. And I said, what's a TLA? And they said a 3-letter acronym. I was like,
oh my.
I know, it's shocking.
TLDR. You got those, don't you? Too long, didn't read.
Yeah. So, so there's, the AI wave that's sort of taking over the planet. Telecoms and telephony has not been immune to that. And there's been so many great advancements in terms of how that's brought so much more positive change to our industry, not, I suppose, in terms of front end, in terms of customer experience, but also back end in terms of how quickly we can get systems spun up, troubleshooting, being proactive, spotting issues before they become issues, etc. So we can give seamless employee experience, which I think is really important. If you're going to give great customer experience, you need to have great employee experience as well. So some of the really cool AI developments has been, so we call them intelligent virtual assistants or intelligent virtual receptionists, and IVRs, IVAs, depending on who you talk to.
So that's what it means. Yes. An intelligent virtual assistant or receptionist.
Yeah,
okay, and that basically chatbot.
Yeah, basically an AI person that you're speaking to. And
a trained bot that does the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Nurturing or dealing with, I suppose, the inbound call until the human can get to you.
Yeah, exactly. And depending on who you talk to, someone will call it one and someone may call it another. Yeah, and it's got to a point now where, to be honest, you probably wouldn't know you're speaking to an AI agent versus a human. And it's actually kind of quite scary. I had a demo the other day and it was mind-boggling. But part of that, again, is because it's AI, you can integrate lots of different software solutions, data into that. So again, we're seeing something that's a real sort of transformation, and something that's really hot topic within our own customer base is, hey, we're getting a lot of calls. I need to manage these calls better. I've got my receptionist team at the dealership. We got footfall coming in and we got calls coming in at the same time. How on earth do I make sure I'm giving great customer experience to the people walking in, but also to the ones that are phoning in? So it's about handling those calls, again, integrated with the DMS so that they can say, oh yeah, I can see that your car's booked in. Do you want me to put you through the service team, or do you want me to give you the update? It's so cool because we've all been there. I've been there. I'm sure you have as well. When you go your car for a service, trying to get hold of someone for an update. What's going on with my car? Can I come pick it up? You don't get a call back. We've done a lot of research in terms of that, and in terms of the telecoms into automotive, the second biggest complaint for automotive dealers is unanswered calls. Out of everything, that's not just telephony. That's everything.
And you haven't phoned me back.
Yeah.
I've triggered an inquiry into something and you don't come back to me.
Yeah. And you've probably had that experience. I've had, and I'm sure the audience have had that experience as well. And we can remove that negative experience by saying, well, actually, rather than me put you through and you just ringing until you lose signal or get bored, let me deal with it. I can tell you when your car's ready. I can send you an SMS. I can say, yeah, there's some advisory work. Do you want me to authorize it, or do you want to speak to the service advisor just to get a little bit more detail?
Yeah.
All of that really, really cool stuff. So in terms of AI, it's come down to that. In terms of IVRs, IVAs as well is really, really key. Part of that also is the sentiment analysis, which we touched on a little bit earlier in terms of getting that customer sentiment as well. But if someone then does want to escalate and talk to a human, it's around some technologies that have more barriers to that than others. And we've probably been there. I want to speak to a human. Sorry, I can't help with that. Go back to the beginning. Sorry, I can't help with that. Go back to the beginning. If you do have some, I know, yeah, we've all been there. It's
frustrating, but but it just feels like it doesn't need to be. I don't want to have to go back to the beginning. Yeah. I get so frustrated. I don't have enough time in my life.
And sometimes
my sentiment is like rage when I have to like reach out. I'm like, come on, I just expect it to work. It's really frustrating when it doesn't.
It is, and it can create that barrier to sale or barrier to to entry for those people that are trying to phone in, speak to someone, and for whatever reason they may have a poor experience with it, and that's okay. Or they might say, I don't want to communicate in this way. I want to phone up and I want to speak to a human. And if someone says that, that's fine. We recognize that. And when they phone in the next time, guess what? We're not going to put them through that again. We'll put them straight through to the human, because regardless if you think that's better, worse, whatever, for me, I prefer dealing with an AI agent that I can speak to straight away, not waiting on hold for 5 minutes, not going to linger around for a callback. I get all that information. Some people still really want that human connection. And that's absolutely fine. And I think it's so important still that we have that.
Have choice.
Yeah, because buying a car is a huge decision. It's up there with probably not far behind your house in terms of some of the biggest purchases you'll ever make in your life, and it's such an emotional decision as well. So we need to be respectful of that with the technology that we have, but also respectful of how our customers want to communicate with us. Tesla was an interesting model in terms of when was it during COVID? You don't have to even speak to someone when you buy a car. You paste the audio online, you buy it, you go pick it up. Cinch is another one, I suppose, where you don't even speak to someone, you buy the car, it gets dropped off at your house, you're all good. Some people really like that model. Some people actually want to see the car, go into it.
I think it's different with you because you never see the car before you arrive, whereas it's being factory ordered.
Yeah.
But if it's used, you still want to go and weirdly smell it. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, because I've been stung a few times buying a used car and not seeing it, and it's really important. It really is important. Yeah, and fool me once, fool me twice, that sort of thing.
I was looking, but I've got 3 teenage boys, and they've all got used cars because, frankly, they're teenage boys. And so, one's in his early 20s. No, actually, they're both. That's really. I've got 2 boys in their 20s, 1 teenage boy, but all of them have bought new cars. And there was one we turned up to look at it. On paper, looked really good. Turned up to look at it. It was clearly it had been parked under it. There was a big crack in the windscreen. It had been parked under a tree. It was a mess. Another one we turned up. Absolutely smelled of cigarettes, awful. And you just don't know until you've seen it. So yes, you can AI enhance images, but you still do need to validate that what you're seeing is what you're buying, or what you think you're buying is what you're buying. And you also know a lot from a phone call who you're dealing with. I think we haven't really touched on trust, but I think there's something, we did some research years ago about the psychological moments in a car buying journey which are the moments that matter and why they matter.
Yeah.
And trust is a really big one in the car buying journey. Yeah. So I think phone calls, I want to hear your voice. I want to feel like you're, so just hearing someone's voice, so we talk about going old school, but that was how we used to make decisions. Words, tone, body language. Tone is something like 38%.
Oh yeah.
Of your communication. And 7% is words and 45% is body language. Yeah. So so words and tone are really, really important.
Yeah. Well, especially like you say, in terms of the nature of communication, how much of it's verbal, how much of it's non-verbal, but on a telephony call, it's all verbal. So you have to take that tone into account. And that's where I think, going back to earlier, 67% of people will phone a car dealership during that sales process. And if you get that early on and you give that poor experience and there's that trust isn't built from the get-go, then that trust is broken and that could lose you the sale for that car dealership. So it's really, really important to make sure that we're respectful of that, understanding where it is, and also making sure that we provide the education to the dealers and the OEMs to say, you can go down the whole IVA, IVR, full singing, dancing route. That's absolutely fine. And we've got a lot of customers that we're working on AI projects for that. And they're doing some really, really cool stuff in terms of blending data. But we also have some customers that maybe aren't quite ready for that. And that's absolutely fine. And how we then help them is around, let's just take some small steps at a time. Let's just turn on some analytics because, like you say, trust. If you keep phoning a car dealership and they never answer the phone, you're like, does anyone even work here? It's, it's one of those things. So if we just put some analytics on, we can see, okay, you might be missing most of your calls between 8 and 9 and 5 and 6. But if you're open from 9 to 5, you don't know that.
Yeah.
So
people still not providing wraparound call coverage, I think, because that's most people can't ring. I think it's slightly different now. We have a bit more flexibility in our working lives. You can work from home. You can pick up the phone. People aren't micromanaging people to the point where you can't pick up a phone to a car dealership between 9 and 5, but you might feel guilty about doing your car buying in your working hours. Booking a service, maybe not quite so much. But it's Is that really a thing?
It is.
Still?
Yeah, it's one of the big challenges we see in terms of not only just around wraparound, but in hours, making sure your staff are actually picking the phone up. We saw an example recently where there was 85 calls into the service bookings and 1 call was answered out of 85. But they didn't know that because they didn't have analytics on. So we turned the analytics on, we went through the process. And I mean, the bar wasn't set very high, but we massively...
Like, did you get to 5 out of 85?
But we massively improved that. And the problem is you don't know what you don't know. And that's a really key aspect.
You're measuring that in terms of monetization as well then. So I think analytics is great. And then you go, right, so those other 84 calls that you can now answer have generated X amount of revenue.
Yeah. So we could put in things like strike rate and order value. So say, we've calculated that 1 in 4 service calls result in a booking, for example, and that average booking is £250. We can build up. So if you've got, 25 calls in the queue, for example, for the service team, you can see exactly how much that order value is currently waiting or how much has been missed. And it can be horrifying, if you're not picking up those phone calls. But what we then tend to see is a real sort of attitude change because people are aware they're getting monitored, whereas, previously they may not have been. And it's one of those things that's quite interesting that's one of the real drivers in terms of we see, okay, right now they're starting to answer those phone calls, whereas previously they were like, no, we just need to do that, which is, I know it's pretty nuts. And you'd think it's common sense. It's really interesting. We see a lot, if you've got a dealer group that's open from, let's say, 9 till 6, and 9 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the evening, we then turn analytics on, which is wrap around 24 hour, 24/7, 365. We see, actually, you're missing 30 calls between 8 and 9 because you've got your phone lines unopened, and you're missing calls after you're shut. And also, by the way, you're missing an absolute shed load of calls at lunchtime because you're sending all of your staff to lunch at the same time. And guess what? Like you say, when are you phoning up to put your car in for a service? When you look into all your phone? When I, the customer, am on my lunch break? Because like you say, I know not everyone micromanages and stuff, but then if
we have a certain guilt factor, I think you don't want to take the piss when you're at work and do all your personal life, in working hours. You have to but also most of us are kind of booked on Teams calls, and then we tend to have a gap. Most people have a gap in the day when you step away from your laptop to do other things. Yeah. So the fact that there's so Olly, are you then, obviously we have live chat, you can do a cheeky live chat or you can make an inquiry. I'm manually typing it. And that obviously keeps a transcript of that dialogue or that conversation. I do live chat with my bank or with whatever, I can do things like that. Are you then keeping a transcript of the dialogue in the phone so you actually capture a conversation when I do then walk into the dealership or I do then perform whatever next event I'm going to perform because you're tracking event-based behavior and response? I think so how does that?
Yes, that comes into the omni-channel piece. So again, you may choose to email, WhatsApp, web chat, phone call, for example, and we can bring all of those channels in. So when you call in again, we can see your previous interactions. So we can see, you inquired about a test drive, 2 months ago on this model. You had your car booked in for a service and you request that via email. And we can build a picture of you as a person in terms of what channels that you like to communicate. So everyone's different. You might have someone who loves web chat. Fine. Yeah. Someone who loves, me and you, I like phoning people up. That's what I do in the car as well. You might have someone who's a pretty diehard email person, and that's absolutely fine. But we can see all those previous interactions. And what's really nice, and this is where I think sometimes AI can get a little bit of a bad rap, is it's really there to assist us. And if we're not careful with the way that we use AI, it can almost take the emotion out of things. And what we try to do with that is when we bring all of those conversations and interactions to place, you can have the AI sat there next to the agent, then, oh, by the way, so this person has requested this, looked at this, looked at that. And that then allows us as the agent to have all of the information available to have that conversation and also help us connect with that personal and emotional level. And that's what it's really about.
I use Copilot all the time to summarize a long call. Yeah. So I get permission when I'm on the phone, when I'm on a phone, I'm on the Teams, my soft phone, call it. And I'm like, do you mind if I put the AI on just so we can capture notes? And then I can give that person my full attention and not be writing.
So it's so good. I'd say as you, it's so good because you're not there scribbling away. It's just a massive difference.
Yeah. I mean, before you walked in, I thought I just need to double check any key points. I went into my Copilot. I was like, can you give me any notes from my pre-call with Olly? And it came up with a couple of points that we'd covered. So I knew that we could then cover those in this discussion. So it means that I don't have to go long form and write everything down and then thumb through notes to try and remember stuff. So from a dealership's point of view, if the Copilot or the agent, your AI assistant, is summarizing, they can see that Jacqui was looking at this thing, I've serviced on this date, my retention, my finance deal is up then. It can pull together all this data, and you can see any phone calls or conversations that I've had. And sentiment, I'm happy, sad, upset, I have feelings, whatever I might have. But you can overlay sentiment to see. We had on the last podcast, they were talking about how do you make sure that you treat your at-risk customers differently. So actually, if you've got customers that you think might be a flight risk from your brand, you can then really make sure that you love them up, or you target me early with retention or whatever it might be. You can start to do, you can behave differently based on where I'm at with my journey with you. So I think how you gather all of the data from phone calls and you build all of that into your overall picture with everything else that I'm doing, my digital touch points. When I've then walked in because you've stalked my IP in your dealership. So all of those things. But it gives us a bigger picture of, frequency, propensity, all of those good things.
And a connected experience. So if you phone up and your first touch point is the receptionist, for example, and you have the conversation of, hey, my finance deal's coming to an end. I'm interested in looking at a new car. Let me pass you to sales. And you then speak to sales. That summarization of the transcript of the receptionist comes with that call to me. So I can see exactly what's going on. So I know while that call's ringing to me, I can go, great, we got a great opportunity here, and the sentiment's really good, and there's they're inquisitive, etc. So when I answer that call, I know exactly how to answer that phone call. I know exactly what they want to get out of that conversation. The same could be if you want to go to the service department. They've already gone through and say, okay, we know from the DMS integration that let's say the engine oil needs doing. We know that already. So when that call comes into me, you can go, oh, hi, Mr. Harrison, would you like to book in your engine oil service? Say, yeah, that's brilliant, fantastic. Oh, and by the way, boom, 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 boom. They go, well, I'm interested in, the X3, for example. Any chance I can book a test drive? Yeah, let me pass you to sales. That call then gets transferred to sales, but all of that summarization context comes with the call. So you're not leaving it behind leg by leg, which is something that we do tend to see.
Do we get to a point where you don't need to pass me to sales? You can just say, I can see we've got one available, I'm going to book you in.
Yeah.
You don't need to pass me to someone else. I've got a relationship with you.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're literally in that conversation with me. Wow. Yeah, that'd be great. And then when I do come in, sales can help me with something.
Yeah.
If I want to go ahead.
Yeah.
So there's some really good stuff. So just in terms of kind of what's coming then, what's exciting in the world of, I suppose, AI assisted telephony and all of the kind of work that you're doing? What can we expect to see in automotive, and what should we be asking our telco providers to do more for us? How can we kind of make sure we challenge you more to kind of do more?
Absolutely. I think for me, in terms of where we're going in terms of the telephony industry, is really around starting with the employee experience to drive the customer experience. Because if you've got systems that are completely separate, like you said, siloed, if you have a clunky technology stack, you're going to have a clunky customer experience. And that's, as straight as I can say it. I think you need to be demanding integration, making sure that you've got APIs, which is application programmable interfaces, which basically we
live on APIs. The whole world is going through APIs.
So I suppose just for anyone who doesn't understand, that's how different applications can communicate and share data with each other.
It's like the data channels are open.
Exactly.
You've got the data comes in, data goes out, but actually ultimately updates in all systems because the data is we have a thing where we have a push and a get. So actually if system A is updated, we should then fetch it into our system, or we push it out back into your system. And that's how the data should flow. So when you've taken a call recording, that transcript should then reside in the DMS or the system of record, or however you architect your system. But it should require less double keying, less having to look up things, because it should be where you need it, and then add on AI to kind of crunch it down. That's where you start to really see, I suppose.
Well, exactly. Because if you don't have those integrated systems, it's not only costing you, poor customer experience, poor employee experience, costing you time. We've done some studies. If you have an integrated system, you will save 25 seconds per phone call in terms of not going around faffing around. What's your registration number? Oh, don't know. Let me go find it. And that's 25 seconds per call. You can imagine how many calls a dealership group are taking a day, week, month. That adds up to a colossal amount of time that you can save just by having something that's integrated.
And then the value of those calls, like you mentioned, the 1 out of 85 being answered, answer the other 84, for goodness sake.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really key in terms of making sure that you have that integrated experience, because if you don't, you probably can provide great customer experience, but it's going to be a lot more challenging than if you don't. Also, just making sure that you have some level of an AI strategy. We understand right now, we've got some of our customers that are bleeding edge. They're trialing AI that is really at the forefront, and that's fantastic. We love that. I love getting involved in those projects. We've also got some of our customers that don't really know. Well, I don't know what that does for me. I'm not sure. I'm not comfortable with that yet, and that's fine. But it's down to your telco to help you, guide you. Ultimately, we're the telco experts. You guys are the automotive experts.
Yeah.
Let's work together.
Yeah.
Let's provide that seamless experience. And I suppose another thing as well is just demanding better. In terms of SLAs, uptimes, there's not really any excuse now for large amounts of downtime with the tools that we've got, and also AI in the background and troubleshooting, making sure that we can optimize networks for hosted telephony, all of that sort of stuff. And it's a problem and a challenge that a lot of businesses are going to face in January 2027, because that's when your traditional telephone lines are getting turned off. So you need to be ready.
Yeah.
You need to start having these conversations now. And that's what we're tending to see. We're having those conversations, making sure people are ready, making sure they're comfortable. If you're not on cloud already, making sure that you're ready to jump.
That's a good point, actually, for people that don't know. And I didn't know this, actually, that January 2027, the traditional phone line that comes to your house, the copper wire, gone. Really? So completely.
They've pushed it back. It was supposed to be this year, and they pushed it back another 2 years.
Yeah.
But again, other countries around Europe, they're already fully off in terms of that PSTN, ISDN network. They're already off. So if you've got the big tin box on your site, you've got a couple more years, and then you're gonna have to find a different solution. Yeah. So
what did you call it? So
PSTN and ISDN lines.
It is funny how quickly the technology has just really accelerated.
It's crazy. I mean, it really is. I mean, from the customer side of things, it has. But I mean, in the background, for us, we've got customers in 22 countries, but we've got the ability to reach 156, which is pretty crazy. And if back, even 10 years ago, if we wanted to set a new country up, so we'd have to then put in hardware into a data center, and from a technology perspective, it would probably take us weeks, maybe even a couple of months to get set up. Right now, we said, we've got a customer who wants setting up in a country that we're not there. We can set that up in 3 or 4 hours. Have a virtual SBC in a data center in country in 3 or 4 hours.
SBC.
A session border controller, basically what allows what monitors and controls the telephony traffic, basically. Yeah. So from a technology piece, we've gone from months, weeks, we skipped days, we've gone down to hours in terms of setting up a new country. From a technology perspective, it's fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of regulations, obviously, so we can get the system ready in a couple of hours, but in terms of actually sort of regulations, it's again, that's something that's probably quite key, and maybe people don't realize the technology regulations are forever changing in terms of you want to order numbers, the ID piece you need to do. Europe's gone for a massive piece of the anti-terrorism legislation in terms of documentation that you need to provide. You need to be registered carriers and all that sort of stuff. So I suppose probably what most customers won't understand or maybe see from that side of telephony, there's lots of legalities and loopholes that you have to jump through, and it's good because that means we're living in a more of a secure, connected environment. But it's pretty cool in terms of some of the stuff that we can do and turn that on and give that global service like that, which is awesome.
That is mad, isn't it? Within like hours, not weeks or days.
Yeah.
It's like
something that boggled my mind the other day was we had a customer who's in the medical industry.
Right.
They're mainly based in the US, and they were 4,500 miles away. There's 800 users using Microsoft Teams as the endpoint, and we did it fully remote in a couple of hours. You think 10, 15 years ago, that was probably impossible. It's nuts. It's nuts, the fact that we can have that global reach now, and it's it's pretty cool.
That is amazing. That is impressive. So Yeah, sorry, 800 users using, that is impressive.
Yeah.
That is impressive.
Yeah,
so,
but again, utilising tools, AI to be able to do that and making sure actually this person's got home network, for example, isn't working. We can see that the traffic's not routing there. This is the recommendation to change the firewall, for example. Yeah, you can get up and running. And because of the time difference, we could do that and give all of the IT teams all the stuff, the information before that person's even realised there was an issue. So it's really cool in terms of how we can create that seamless experience, but like you say, underneath it's
frantic. So just thinking, one of the questions I was thinking about as you were speaking earlier, Olly, was we talked about wraparound, making sure that customers can contact you or your agent, whatever, at whatever point. Is there any reason why dealers aren't switching or aren't answering phones, even if it's with an AI or agentic AI 24 hours a day?
In my opinion, this should be, because why not? You've got an AI.
Your website's live 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
Wasn't your phone call?
Yeah, it's 24/7, 365. Someone wants to phone up Christmas Day if they wanted to, they can do.
I mean, sad, but watch TV, whatever.
Exactly.
Eat food.
Yeah, and there's no reason why you shouldn't. To be honest, there's no reason, because you can then decide, hey, I want an agentic agent that can actually go and book that in. It can see when the service slots are available and we can book that in. Or you may just want an out-of-hours service that collects some information. So when the guys come in at 9 o'clock in the morning, guess what? We've got 15 requests that came in overnight. Here's all the details. Let's go and phone them back.
Respond to them rather than having 84 calls that you've no idea what's happened with those people, or you've lost them and they've gone somewhere else. So I think that's the bit where you can, I think it's understanding the lost opportunity. It's kind of eye-watering, isn't it? If that's what's going on, if you're not switching on analytics. I think so. Actually, what would be really great is like 2 or 3 things that you think, here's what you can do to start to make a real impact in your business and understand the data that you have access to or that you should be listening to.
Number 1, definitely integrate your DMS with your telephony, 100%, because like I mentioned, that's 25 seconds of calls saved. Customer experience in terms of knowing who you are, that's absolutely key, first and foremost. Secondly would be analytics. You don't know what you don't know. And part of that is, are we making sure that we're efficient with our workforce management? Are we sending everyone to lunch at the same time? When are we getting those calls out of hours? But also, what's really cool in terms of the analytics piece is, you might have like 50 unreturned lost calls, but actually, you've actually only missed 5 because that customer might have actually phoned you back.
Yes.
Or someone's phoned them back. So rather than duplicating workload, someone might have, I've got 50 missed calls. Actually, you've got 5. So let's just phone the 5 back. So you save a lot of time in terms of doing that.
Yeah.
And then I'd definitely say what we tend to see across our automotive customer base is majority have call recording turned on. Tune that up with AI. We can do that now. And that's going to give you a much better window in terms of the customer sentiment towards you, how your customers are interacting, but also how you can then make sure you're capturing every opportunity from a sales perspective. So if, for example, you're running a winter promotion on tires or free MOT health check, if a call happens with your sales team and they don't say that, we can let you know. So if someone keeps not going through our winter promotions, hey, let's have a little chat and bring them in for some more training so we can make sure we're capturing every single opportunity. So those are probably the 3 core things. And just to add a 3.5, ensure you've got an AI strategy, because if you don't, someone else does.
Olly Harrison, that was a really, really useful session. Thank you so much for coming into the studio. And actually, omnichannel should include phone, because we all like to pick up the phone. Quite a lot of customers still need to talk to a human, so make sure that you facilitate that. But listen, thanks so much again for coming into the studio, and it's been really great. Yeah, thank you for having me. I loved it. So thanks again, Olly Harrison from Green IP. That was really interesting. I spent my first half of my career on telephone sales, so actually seeing how far telco has come has been really interesting. Stay tuned for the Gear Change episode, where we're going to dive more into some of those key outtakes you can adopt into your business using telephony and the tech that's now available in your telephone systems. So don't forget to like, follow and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and you'll never miss an episode of the Drivetime Podcast.